It was the start of a new decade in 2009, and New York was enjoying a peaceful dawn until a shocking incident shook the city. Shelley Coven, a successful finance professional, was found dead in her bathtub. Her house was used to be a source of joy and warmth, was now a haunted, strangely quiet shell that spoke of a terrible tragedy that had happened inside. This house is like a puzzle now. There are more questions than answers, and there are more shadows than light. Finding Shelley Coven's dead body shocked everyone and caused a lot of misunderstanding. When help came, there were no signs of a fight or any other wrongdoing. It looked like an accident. Shelley was quickly cremated without an autopsy or a proper service because she was Jewish. But after the mourners went and the ashes settled, a troubling truth came to light. She was not scared of the dark or death of her ex-husband Rod Coven. A few days before she died, she wrote a will to cut off all ties with him. This was a big step that showed how scared she was. This new information put a shadow over the idea that the death was an accident and made people wonder about possible evil motives. After 5 years, a strange call brought the story back to life. Deborah Holmes called the New York Police Department, sparking interest in a case that had been sitting in the cold case files for a while. This call changed the course of an investigation that had been quiet for years. Deborah Holmes had important clues about the case. As time went on and the NYPD started looking into Shelley's death again, the story surrounding her death became even more complicated. With new resolve, police dug into the past to try to find the truth that they had been looking for so long. The public learning of Shelley's fear and the sudden resurgence of the case led to more discussion. It sounds more like something bad happened than just a sad accident. As officials tried to figure out what happened, they looked at every part of Shelley's life, including her relationships and the events that led up to her death. Fear, an unknown will, and the sudden restarting of the case made Shelley Coven's last days very complicated. Was her death really an accident, or was it a sneaky act of evil? The study that was still going on was meant to answer this important question by revealing layers of lies and intrigue that had been kept secret for years. The NYPD carefully went through the evidence and went over witness statements again and again. This is when the puzzle pieces started to fit together. After hiding in the shadows for 5 years, the scary truth was finally coming out. Shelley Coven's case was prematurely closed, but detectives were now looking into a darker story. Holmes said she had important information, likely a piece of proof that could blow the case wide open. The officers were interested and hopeful, so they set up a time to meet her. Holmes was not just any caller. She was a close friend of the victim and had information that would significantly change the course of the case. A few days before she died too soon, Shelley told Holmes about a big choice she had made. She had written a new will that tried to keep Coven from getting any of her money. This was a big change from her last will, which gave him everything she owned. Finding and proving this new will would be a good reason to kill someone. The investigation got a huge boost from this new information. All of a sudden, the puzzle pieces began to fit together. The officers now had a new clue and a new way to look for the person. The investigation turned its attention to Rod Coven, who had the most to lose from Shelley's new will. Everyone was now looking closely at what he did, what excuses he gave in his whole life. As the officers looked into the case more, they found a web of lies, deceit, and manipulation. The couple's life, which seemed perfect at first glance, was not what it seemed to be. Something darker and more evil was slowly coming to light. Things were starting to change, and Rod Coven was now in the spotlight. The NYPD got new hints about Shelley's death, so they started investigating again. Detectives were frustrated because the case wasn't progressing. But with the new lead, they felt motivated. They made a bold move. They decided to dig up Shelley's body. This was an emotional and risky choice, as it could reveal more than just a body, maybe even the truth. The second autopsy was an incredibly accurate examination. An expert in forensic science looked closely at every detail and re-examined every piece of proof. There were whispers of violence and small signs of foul play that the forensic pathologists were looking for. The results of the second autopsy were both scary and helpful. When the medical experts found signs of strangulation, it sent shockwaves through the case. As was already known, this was not just a case of drowning, it was murder. This new information brought the investigation back to life when it was almost over. Putting the puzzle together piece by piece, the agents were more determined than ever. They went back to the crime scene, talked to witnesses again, and looked at all the evidence again. There was unwavering desire to follow every lead and explore every possible route. As they continued the investigation, a pattern emerged. Rod Coven kept appearing as a suspect. He played a significant role in the unfolding events. He was the one thing that all the different pieces of proof had in common. Everything he did, said, and how he acted started to paint a picture that was hard to erase. The officers could feel the net getting tighter. The case was getting stronger every day as more proof came in. Things that were once cloudy were becoming clearer, and the truth was coming to the surface. The proof kept getting stronger, and it all led to Rod Coven. There was going to be a big fight when the courtroom doors opened. There have been many stories of lies and betrayal in the halls of justice, but the case of Rod Coven would shock even the most experienced warriors. Each day of the trial brought new discoveries and damning pieces of evidence to the public's attention like a gripping story. The prosecution presented its case thoroughly, crafting a narrative that portrayed Coven as a calculated and heartless murderer who carefully planned his crimes. Their case was based on three main points: the strange circumstances of Shelley Kinn's death, Coven's contradictory stories, and the terrifying motive of greed. On the other hand, the defense did have some plans. It was their attempt to refute the accusations, calling into question the prosecution's claims and the proof. They made Coven look like a sad husband who was misread and wrongly accused, a man caught in the middle of a terrible event. They said that the evidence was at best weak and that the prosecution was depending too much on guesses instead of solid proof. Everyone in the courtroom heard the defense's plea: innocent until proven guilty. But the prosecutors fired back without being scared. They brought out a bunch of witnesses, and each one supported what they were saying. People who worked with forensics, Shelley's friends, and even Coven's own daughter testified, drawing a dark picture of a man motivated by greed and evil. Every word spoken and piece of proof seemed to tip the scales of justice, balancing them dangerously between guilt and innocence. A lot of excitement was in the air. People in the crowd held their breath as the prosecutors and defense spoke their last words. The judges who quietly watched the complex proceedings had a big task ahead. They had heard the reasons and seen the proof. Now they had to make a choice. Is Rod Coven a victim of his circumstances or a cold-blooded killer? The judges had heard everything, and now Rod Coven's fate was up in the air. People were very quiet in the courtroom because they were waiting for the decision. The sad story of Shelley's case, which had the whole city on edge, was coming to a head. It was crucial not only for the people directly involved in the trial, but also for those closely watching and holding their breath for the end result. After a long discussion, the judges came back with a decision. People found Rod Coven guilty, who was at the center of this sad story. The charge was murder in the second degree. A lot of people in the courtroom let out a mix of gasps and sighs. The stress had been building up during the trial. Everyone there felt the weight of the decision, which was a stark reminder of how horrible the crime was. Coven got a harsh term because the crime he committed was so bad. He received a sentence of 25 years to life in jail without the chance of parole. Even though this term is fair, it will never be enough to make up for the loss of Shelley Coven. She was a beautiful woman whose life was cut short in such a cruel way. There was a lot going on after the ruling. Even though the victim's family was happy with the result, they had to deal with the harsh reality of their loss. The neighborhood was also shocked. This was a crime that happened close to home. It was a painful reminder of how dark things can be in even the most peaceful places. The case had a big effect on many people. This shocking event sparked a new wave of efforts to protect the safety and security of people and a review of the defenses used against such horrible crimes. These cases keep happening, serving as a warning of how precious and short life is. Thanks for joining us on this journey through Shelley Coven's tragic story. Subscribe for more compelling content. Rod Coven's guilty verdict sheds light on the darkness that can lurk even in peaceful places. The impact of this case serves as a somber reminder of life's preciousness.